Look at those green mountains from the time-lapse video I show every morning. Hey guys, welcome to Wake Up Missoula. It's time for Wake Up Missoula. Talk about everything about Missoula and beyond. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. We have some Christmas-themed videos to show you guys, along with another interview with Gary Gillette featuring A Tube of Christmas, which is happening tonight at 7 p.m. at Southgate Mall near Shields of Missoula. So big news, kind of things happening through here. I'm going to kind of go through the main headlines happening through AP News. Is that judge orders Guatemalan newspaper chief to stand trial. The director of Guatemalan investigated newspaper will stand trial of money laundering, influence peddling, and blackmail. A judge ruled Thursday. UNAID chief, gangs control about 60% of Haiti. So that's what's happening in recent news today, is that there's a huge power struggle in Haiti's capital. Port-au-Prince. Brittany Griner is back home after a prisoner swap, and we're getting into this right now. So talk about some more local news happening here in the city of Missoula. We have planning to create a single lanes down Higgins in the corridor just leading up to the Bear Track Bridge. This is basically between Hellgate High School and the Bear Track Bridge, and they're going to be trying to convert those into single lanes and having it a little bit more appropriate for bikers and having bike lanes, much like they did for the Higgins Street as well. As someone who has seen the transition from the 4 lanes to 2 lanes in the downtown area, traffic is a little calmer and regardless of how bikers pop in and out of those bike lanes near the sidewalk, I can confidently say that less folks are using the sidewalks as bike lanes as a result. So my favorite story from Missoula Current was a lengthy defense of cannabis businesses in the area by throwing liquor stores and casinos under the bus. It was very short. This was following a public safety and health meeting that spoke about youth use and the psychedelic that affects the developing mind in more occasions than the fully formed gray matter that we enjoy tasting. The main point was to defend the abundance of dispensaries in Missoula and blaming alcohol for many issues that have been ongoing and remain unchecked. The story was short. I had to add some context just from the last City Council's committee meeting to talk about this. But like I said last week, and I'll say it again, be careful who your kids are friends with and who they hang out with, including some of their older siblings. You got to watch out for them too. For the most part, having a third lane in the middle will help folks wanting to turn left on the 6th and 5th Street. I'm sorry, that kind of blended in from the last story, but that's just kind of, we're back to referring to the single lanes that they're doing on Higgins Avenue. So as we wrap up this week, the Biden administration basically siding with the owner class of the rail union's attempt to have adequate sick time to get time off to go home and then see a doctor. The point of sick leave was to be able to schedule an appointment ASAP and have the right amount of sick time to pay the costs of the doctor visit, the waiting room, and the waiting room, and the waiting room. Again, for those who visit the doctor, for profit hospitals like that. So, and this kind of goes on the heels because there's not really much. America is basically saying, like, oh, we avoided a strike. Is like, oh, the U.S. government had to intervene. So I had to look into other world news to talk a little bit more about U.S. workers, since a lot of the mainstream media hasn't really been talking too much about the workers themselves. So this is actually from BBC. 30 million U.S. workers have one thing in common with the rail workers: no paid sick leave. However, they did get a pay raise, an additional personal day, and other few benefits, but no paid sick leave. COVID made many companies scale back their workers to help mitigate spread, and when the pandemic started to ease, they noticed that their profit margins were going up, and they didn't have to rehire a lot of the workforce back. So it's a tale as old as time, and this is something that it seems to be an ongoing theme, not only in the rail union market, but a general markets in the national narrative in a way. So one of the big issues is the past resulted in a very few doing most, and since businesses were booming, it made sense financially. The U.S. is one of only 2 countries in the 38-member Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development without national law guaranteeing paid sick leave for the workers. It's always about the railroad workers. Nursing is yet another job that some have not had paid sick leave. The fact that U.S. taxpayers had to foot the bill for the 2020 CARES Act that covered the 2 weeks paid sick leave during that emergency time left many in a better position, but these things never last. For those of you who think that maybe people could lie and say that they're taking sick leave, wouldn't that be considered fraud and wouldn't be even more subject to penalty expulsion? I mean, sick leave shouldn't have a big deal, But without checks and balances in place, we turn to the government to take care of our money instead of our government advocating to protect the people and not business interests. You may see places are hiring, but according to job reports, they always have announcements of new jobs, but it doesn't seem to answer if the employer is actually hiring people. In many ways, if they have a skeleton crew, keep the lights on for the profits, should reflect a successful business of squeezing every penny out of every store with less workers. We're short-staffed. Sound familiar? But they say that they need those positions filled, but having them filled is another issue entirely. And those are some of the things that happened with the Kellogg cereal company, dealt with long hours, lower staff. John Deere had theirs with the company with those two companies going on strike, and then John Deere trying to have the white-collar workers who have never worked in their factories actually do the job with terrible results. But that's some of the things that they were kind of helping dealing with. But the biggest change is that the railroad strike, the rail workers are having to deal with the fact that the government intervenes and said, like, hey, if you go on strike, it's illegal. So you have no rights to actually advocate for your paid sick leave. So we're going to put this on the table, and so you're kind of stuck at your job. So, think about that. So, yeah, it's just kind of how it is. So next time you get a job, be careful who you hitch your wagon to. Just really think about that and moving forward. The fact that the Western countries are still taking Russian oil is still kind of goes against their support of the Ukraine deal, right? So the G7 agreed recently to accept oil from Russia with a $60 cap per barrel, the use of their tankers to third world nations to curb the war machine in Russia. Russia, which is the world's second largest oil exporter, said Sunday it would not accept the cap and would not sell oil that is subject to it, even if it has to cut production. Russia has become a richer country because of oil and natural gas through export over the last couple decades, and allows them to rebuild and be a really crucial part of the world economy. The cap plans to go into effect in February after the official meeting of the EU and the G7 summit in January. Winter is here, and many efforts in Ukraine have been slowed down, and many of the people are without power and were recently forced to leave the southern region of Kherson right after the people regained the Russian-controlled region. So far, Russia has relied on crippling the nation's infrastructure and continues strategically targeting sites that power large chunks of the nation. And on top of that, just recent news on Thursday, Brittany Griner, American arrested in Russia last year when she brought cannabis overseas, made a trade with a Russian arms dealer for her release after months of negotiation and a take it or leave it offer from the Russian officials. The deal announced Thursday saw that Griner exchanged from notorious arms dealer Victor Bout, achieved a top goal for President Joe Biden, but the U.S. failed to win freedom for another American, Paul Whelan, who's kind of fell through the cracks, who has been in jail in a Russian prison for nearly 4 years. Things in China are starting to see signs of normalcy with COVID restrictions easing. So they said that they're trying to get rid of their zero COVID policy, but without giving, because they're still worried about millions of older Chinese people who have not been vaccinated, and they wanted to have a kind of an ease back into it, but they heard a lot of the protests that were happening there, and so they're moving towards it without going full steam and being like, oh, you don't have to wear a mask, just live your life, whatever. So they are still having a lot of control over the citizens, but by mid-2023, they hope to be scrapping, not completely scrapping zero COVID, but a lot of their policies that prevent people from actually being able to go out and live their lives. So that's kind of what's happening there. A lot of crazy things happening. And then Germany, of all places, there was an attempted coup to overthrow their government just recently. Before all that Nazi businesses, the Germans, like many other countries, had monarchies. And World War I was fought over territories in Africa, Middle East, and all those places. After the war to end of all wars, many countries kind of overthrew and greatly handicapped their monarchs across Europe. This coup was attempted by a descendant of German royalty, Heinrich VIII, Prince Rus, a 71-year-old member of the House of Rus who continues to use the title despite Germany abolishing any former rule of the century ago. So he's kind of like, in a way, he's kind of become a figure amongst the far right, as the German press has called it, far right extremists in Germany, as a way to bring back the old status quo from pre-Nazi Germany. So a lot of groups behind this became more powerful through frustrations of COVID restrictions. Like a lot of people were stuck indoors. They spent too much time on the screen, got a lot of information, but a lot of information that piqued their interest and not necessarily spoke truth. So there's just a lot of information out there, but lots up world news with Iran. The morality police of course, one of the things that happened just last week is that they closed the morality police, even though they haven't indicated that they're going to get rid of it. So far, many women have removed their hijab and have been living their lives despite the religious power that has required them. In a way, it's like a dress code in high school gets ignored, and the effort to enforce it has become much more of a liability. On Saturday, Iran's chief prosecutor, Mohad Jafar Mozzarelli, sorry if I mispronounced that, said that the religious police has been closed in a report published by the semi-official news agency ISNA. He was also quoted as saying as the government was reviewing the mandatory hijab law. That doesn't mean it's the end, but it does mean something is happening in the government anyways. And of course, this is a very confusing time, and many media outlets have reported an instant victory for women's rights in Iran. But frankly, the government may either double down using a bolstered morality police or simply changing the name, kind of like how we changed the name from homeless to houselessness. So it's the same thing, it's just said differently. All right, so those are some of the things that are happening as well, just happening in the news. We're going to jump right in. We have a special, I did a re-edit of an edited video that MCAT covered the Parade of Lights, or at this point is a holiday village of vendors and businesses that dressed up the streets of Missoula last Saturday. Lauren Scholl went out with Coach Shane again this year to give the people a little taste of the holidays.
Well, folks, here we are. Back at it one more time for the 2022 Missoula Parade of Lights Christmas Village.
Ah, yes, MCAT, the only cat that doesn't mess with Christmas trees. All right, we're going to jump right into some pre-critic. where I prejudge a movie based on absolutely nothing, and I'm prejudging it once again. It's called The Whale. If you stop seeing me for a couple months, you can expect me to look like this guy, slowly eating himself to an early grave. Enjoy a character study that has Brendan Fraser as a fat guy and get all the love from critics while his character is looked at in disgust and hatred as his weight is a personification of his grief. Enjoy a bummer of a movie that will probably make you cry, since most film festivals have that guy standing ovation for an average of 5 minutes per thing. So enjoy this hoity-toity Oscar bait film that everyone's going to love, and people are going to hate me for judging it. So spoiler alert, finally a Christmas movie called Spoiler Alert. We have not had one in a long time. Best time for family and friends to get together to talk about cancer. Okay, suppose I should go back to the Santa Claus's Christmas show run on Disney Plus. It's a thing because they are safe unless you are parents of uncles. Weird, I don't know why I wrote that. Anyway, Sheldon from Big Bang Theory jumps into a holiday romance, which is a rom-com, which actually states well, it's a rom-com with actual stakes, which is like an old, anyways. Someone who has to die in these movies because there's always has to have a cancer movie every year, and why not just jumble that up with a Christmas movie? Cancer's terrible, by the way. I don't like, but I'm joking. Like, I'm making fun of these movies. That's the whole point. Anyways, Detective Night Redemption. For the first time, Bruce Willis is doing a Christmas action movie where he plays a detective during a spree of crimes committed on Christmas. I wish they had a Die Hard movie that took place during the holidays. It's just a shame, honestly. Enjoy all the tropes from "I'm getting too old for this" is "oh ho ho, no way, bad guys." You know puns and stuff. Enjoy a movie that forces the Christmas spirit down these terrorists' throats in an allegory for knights of the Round Table who fight for what is right rather than follow the rules. I suspect we'll not see the end of Bruce Willis because he's probably done like 50 films before he recently had his brain thing happen. So anyways, welcome back, Bruce. Finally, we have a movie which is basically like one of those kind of like found family kind of movies where it's just like, it's called Empire of Light. I'm assuming it's a board-order gal in a midlife crisis goes to a small town to find herself. And let me just guess, she does. Explore people's lives as they are at an intersect in their lives at the same time in this small coastal town. Enjoy a series of sadness and uplifting stories come together and trauma bond their way to a better place and overcoming their insecurities. I suppose these two unlikely friendships are formed after they get stuck in a small town and learn to love again, just in time for their bus, plane, or car to pick them up. Anyways, up next we have a new Dubbin Stuff with me doing terrible Australian accents from the 1947 movie Bush Christmas. And when I come back, we're going to talk about some city council.
They're out here! They're out here!
Oh, it looks like we're lost again up in the bush. I know I'm going. You know where we're going? Why your accent change?
Well, is it time, Jimmy?
What's he doing?
Just sitting there. Let us know when we want to roll this thing down the hill. Come on! Just a couple more clicks. Couple more steps.
I hope no troublesome kids attack.
Turn range! Ready? Now!
Merry Christmas! Jesus Christ! Everybody get down! Just what the hell? Oh! You guys okay? You doing good? That's weird. That's the thing about hunting rocks. The rocks hunt back. Alright, I think it's safe. Let's go up. Yeah, think that's the end of them? Well, can't say for certain. Well, you're a real top look, I'd say. Let's kill some rocks. Come on, fellas. You want to live forever? Well, I'd like to live for a long time.
All right. Steady. Steady. Now. Yo. Why? Merry Christmas.
Oh, bloody hell. Not again. Let's get out of here, boys. I say, Captain, what are we going to do now? If we keep going like this, we're going dead. Oh, I say, we have a Kevin McAllister kind of situation up there. Well, we ain't no wet bandits, so we got some skill with guns. Hey, Benji, let me up. Oi, Captain. All right, going up. Oh, God, thank you very much. Jeez.
Just what the heck?
Okay. Throw me my gun. Here. Thanks.
Oh, Down, down, down! What did you say? Hide, Jingos! Oh, no!
Well, they warned me about this hill, that it's haunted, but my gun will help. The rocks are impervious to bullets, you know that, right? Why don't you just go to the bathroom or whatever? Just stop complaining. That's why my wife's my only friend. My wife told me that you're a real top look. Guess that ain't the case. Why don't you do something useful and start a fire or something? Or build a... Oh, it's the bachelorette party all over again. Alright, you Kevin McAllisters. Figure out where you are.
This is the Master of Wills. Hey, Binky, take a look. Are you sure about that? It'll be fine. I doubt rocks beat guns anyway. Oh, relax. I know what I'm doing. Arm heights. Oh, the pearly gates. Oh, save me, save me.
Oh, will
The
you
pearly
relax?
gates are coming
You
for
only
me.
got hit in the head.
Oh, I'm still alive? Oh, great. Well, at least my hat looks cool now. Come on, boys, let's get out of here. I'm coming.
Hey guys, welcome back. Let's jump right into your city council report. We're going to kick things off. There's a couple three topics. One of the big topics is the city acquisition of the old post office downtown Missoula. Another one is the Lower Miller Creek, which they're talking about a brand new neighborhood that's being built just adjacent to the Jeanette Rankin School up the Lower Miller Creek area just past Linda Vista. And also we're going to be talking a little bit more about Marshall Mountain acquisition, about the Parks and Rec and open space bond money to utilize a new space for us to enjoy like a park. Anyways, let's jump right into your city council reports. Let's see. But for final consideration, United Way of Missoula were acquainted $80,000 to upright the centralized housing solution. I spoke about this in length before, and this is basically to help people who are struggling to pay the rent stay in their homes and be able to continue operate and live their lives. So here's Heidi West. Oh wait, where is Heidi West? Anyways, my bad. I am kind of backwards right now. Weird. I could have sworn I had her. That's really weird. Anyways, I think. Okay, I just got it backwards. Okay, let's jump right in. So here's Heidi West. Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. Just had to rearrange some clips. But here's Heidi West talking about the centralized housing solution.
So I think this is an ideal example of how our Affordable Housing Trust Fund should be used. This is a really flexible funding source, and I believe the average payment was $400 to a household to keep folks housed. So this is a really it's a very small investment per household and makes a world of a difference for that household. So I fully support this, and yeah, it's just a great example of how to use the Housing Trust Fund.
Cool. And the housing trust, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee are the ones that made the decision. They're made up of citizens here of the city of Missoula. United Way Missoula offers this program to folks struggling to pay the rent, and will bolster this program further with a budget of $80,000 compared to last year's budget, which was $26,000, which went on to help up to 140 people in the city of Missoula. Missoula City County Health Code adopted a reference. This is adopted by reference. This is a city-county deal that had to be updated based on state law, that this is a housekeeping and will not affect the day-to-day operations of health. This is, and also during public hearing, city finalized their agreement to get the former post office to join forces with Missoula County as a one-stop shop for Missoula government. Total cost of investment is nearly about $15 million mark for a special district created by both the city and county government bodies to cover these costs. Garber Pulley, public comment, isn't too keen on the purchasing of the site and is yeah, so this is a public comment portion of this as well. This is what she had to say.
It appears to be a foregone conclusion that you and the county commissioners want to commit to this exorbitant purchase without voter approval. The voters could vote against the levy of this size. Then what? There is no parking. You need for more administrative space. Your need for more administration is and can be utilized by the old Mountain Water Building and the old library building. You seem to believe that selling both of these properties would be economically better. But does a $40 million replacement make good sense? You do have a spending problem here. Third, for me, Is a copy of the audited financial statements available to the general public so that someone like myself can have access to review them?
Okay, so that was there's Garber Pulley. Garber also mentioned that the site assessment would cost upwards of $1.5 million, which to her would be a foot in the door to the final purchase. As we dive into the actual presentation, Jordan Hess, mayor, talks about this project as a whole, and this is what he had to say.
This project presents us an opportunity to preserve a building that's over 100 years old. It was constructed starting in 1911, and it was added on to a few times up through, I think, about 1938. And it is truly a historic gem in our downtown. This project provides us an opportunity to keep local government downtown and to keep that employment anchor, but also that economic engine of local government downtown, where it will continue to provide economic activity in the downtown area. And
okay, and also Jordan Hess rebukes what Victor Garber said, and this is talking about the intention of the purchase price overall being $40 million, and this is his response.
There's been a number floating around in the media that is partly of our own creating, and that's this $40 million number. We're not going to go out and spend $40 million on this building. That was sort of on the range of options, ranging from minor rehabilitations and asbestos and lead remediation on up to a full building remodel. That was the full-scale remodel. So the proposal as it stands is that we will receive the building for free from the federal government, and that we will do a more modest level of renovations and really save the taxpayer over the long haul while preserving this historic building, providing space for the next generation of local government.
Okay, and so that was Jordan Hess, and then we're going to go right into the presentation itself. We're going to see some pictures and other examples. John Adams, Strategic Project Administrator, who's been taking head on this project, talks more about the rehabilitation process before actually moving in.
To make this the hub of services to the citizens of Missoula, there's a lot of work to make it ADA accessible, to repair water leak in the basement, to abate asbestos, to run data into it and throughout the building, to replace the outdated heating system, outdated plumbing, outdated bathrooms, inadequate and inefficient electric system, to replace the roof. So there's a lot to be done. You can see too that in most of the building there are no offices or separators of any kind. So in this picture, this is what almost everything in the North Annex looks like. If you look at this floor plan, and you look at those little black squares, those are the columns that we just saw in the previous picture. We'll see again here. They used to line a central circulation corridor, but at some point, many of the interior walls were taken out to create cubicle farms, which I had the pleasure to work in once.
Okay, so those are some of the things is that, oh, actually, here, I'm going to bring this up as well, is that these are all the services that are going to be provided through this building, not just the city, but also the county. The city is on the left, the county is on the right. You know, city attorney office, central services, finance, county auditor, central services, community and planning, strategic. You know, the whole point of this is to have synergy and have a one-stop shop for everything government related. And now we actually talk about some of the costs. You know, like that's one of the things that I'm sure like a lot of you is like, hey, we're moving into a new building. And yeah, sure, it's free, but there's always a cost, and you know, the rehabilitation and everything like that. And they actually crunch the numbers about their current status quo with what they're doing, and also talking a little bit more about if they were to move into a different place or just building a building from scratch. So they're looking at this as a net positive. So here's John Adams again.
But when A&E estimated the cost of these different alternatives, they found that rehabilitating the federal building costs no more than stumbling along doing as little as possible. A&E's been clear that because of the difference in the quality of construction between City Hall and the federal building, that dollar for dollar will get better and more durable results investing in the federal building than in City Hall. And then additionally, moving to the federal building will enable us to sell or redevelop City Hall and council chambers. So with this in mind, the final piece of due diligence that A&E completed for us was they devised a preservation and use plan to submit to the National Park Service to outline how we envisioned maintaining the historic aspects of the federal building while also redeveloping the building to suit our needs. In June of 2021, Council approved submitting that document to the National Park Service and committed to accept the building should NPS approve our preservation and use plan. In June of 2022, the National Park Service approved our plan and recommended that the General Service Administration convey the building to us.
Okay. And one big thing that I should also mention as well is that with this new acquisition of this historic building, that they're going to be moving right into the cost-effective solution, and most of the property would be a net gain for citizens, while older buildings and properties sold off by Missoula, if sold off, would be used to bolster the housing trust that goes towards the support the Missoula Affordable Housing Initiative. The original price tag for this project was around $25 million, but according to John Adams, the building is good and the development will run in smoother, and they'll do it in phasing operations. And if I can also refer back to an old slide as well, I do wanted to show you the pricing as well.
City Hall.
So if you actually look at this, the ad hoc leasing, so ad hoc leasing is the essential idea that if they continue to do the status quo, it's still going to cost about that $20 million just for, the $20 million just for the leasing in general. So here once again, ad hoc leasing, let's show it right here. That's the $20 million that the cost through 2034. And so they also mentioned that the money that would be going towards this as well is going to talk about some of the so here's John Adams talking about some of the payments going into the building just before entry. So this is the kind of like, this is how much they have to pay just before moving in.
The other thing that we're doing in this master planning period is beginning to think about how to phase construction at the federal building. So for example, right now we're looking at a concept called the backbone, where what we would do is create a move-in ready shell in the federal building. We would undertake to renovate the base systems like plumbing, electrical, data, and heat, which will be necessary to make the building usable and efficient. We'd bring the building up to ADA code, create secure entrances, make sure the building is seismically sound, replace the roof. We'd provide definition to public spaces. We'd tackle the things which are essential to usability and those that are vastly more expensive or impossible to do in an occupied building. And with that backbone in place, we could subsequently phase in other redevelopment piece by piece as finances and demand allows. So we think that the backbone will cost on the order of $14 to $16 million, and that's split between the city and the county. So we're targeting $7 to $8 million as a phase one backbone cost to make the building really operable and usable, and that's something we think we can realistically fund.
And that money would be stretched out over the next decade or so upon moving in and everything like that. And so instead of doing the all that leasing the city has been doing, that would also accumulate for a net gain essentially with that idea. Of course, it's split between city and county bodies. It's a group effort. The city will not have to go to the voters and will be able to use the budget in place to transition, and the payments in the long run will be part of the general fund. Not to mention, since this is a historic building, the redevelopment can go into federal grants to help booster this site as well. The presentation as a whole is available from the Monday meeting, but I'm going to kind of leave it there. So there's a lot of good news, net positive. In fact, in the long term, they might go back to review this and consider that they'd actually save more money by moving into this free building by rehabilitating it at the bare minimum. So let's jump right into another public hearing, and this is a big deal, what's happening over at Miller Creek, Lower Miller Creek, and it is, like I've said, this is actually a tale as old as time. Is like we have a whole bunch of development, a whole bunch of things that are happening here, but one of the things that are being kind of ignored is roads. So roads is another big thing that we're talking about this, and this is part of the Planned Unit Development, otherwise known as PUD, for the Riverfront Trail, encompassing over 90 acres just off of the Clark Fork River, just off of Highway 93 on that side, but you get there through the Lower Mill Creek, past Linda Vista kind of area. The applicant wants the city to annex the southern portion of the land up Ward 5. This is the newer site north of Jen Emerkin School and past Lower Mill Creek. Cassie Trippard with Community Planning speaks a little bit more about this site, and here is an aerial shot.
All of the floodplain area is proposed to be protected through designation as open space. The area is approximately 43.44 acres and would have public trails throughout. A portion of the open space, including the entire river frontage, is proposed to be dedicated to the city. The remaining portion would be common area maintained by the Homeowners Association. The subdivision proposes 173 residential lots that would allow townhouses, detached houses, and duplexes. One large lot on Lower Miller Creek Road is proposed to be used for a future religious assembly. Another large lot on Lower Miller Creek Road is proposed to be used as a senior living facility, which is considered group living. Lastly, a triangular lot in the southeast corner is proposed to hold a multi-dwelling building with a maximum of 5 dwelling units. In total, the subdivision proposes 178 regular dwelling units and 110 senior living facility units.
Okay, so as you can see, a lot of this stuff was being spoken about, you know, high density, kind of like this idea, and then also the senior living lot was also expressed, talked a lot about during a committee meeting that happened after the city council meeting, and I'll get into that a little bit more as we jump right into your public comments. And you know, the rezoning and the plans are fluid, but the rezoning reflects the desire of the city to accommodate those plans moving forward. You know, Title 20, growth inward, where you have higher density, but it seems that these higher densities seems to be a little bit further out of the city of Missoula. It still counts as the city limits, but for some reason, the kind of concept of growth inward is kind of like still on the edges of where inward would actually be. So that is just my critique of what I've been noticing here in the city of Missoula. But the next portion had to do with the green space and trails by the river, kind of part 2 of this presentation that went into detail I will spare you from. Julie Anton, Melanie Ranch resident, talks about this project, but brings up very familiar issues that you may recognize.
You guys have done an amazing job. This is ridiculously complicated, and I think, you know, needed a lot of creativity. And I think there are a lot of really wonderful things about this neighborhood. But I also think that there are some things that are very concerning to the people who live in the area. And so I'm hoping that you guys can have an open mind. I feel like a lot of residents would be here, but they feel like their voice is never heard. And so they felt like it's a waste of time. And I'm one of those people that I'm going to knock my head against the brick wall and I'm going to keep trying. So here I am. So people want predictability. When people buy homes, they look at the zoning and they base a portion of their purchase decision on this code. People bought their homes in the Lower Miller Creek area because it's away from city amenities and has consistently had a more rural feel to it. When the parcel was subdivided on 4/4/2017, it was zoned CRR-1, which allowed 1 dwelling unit per acre. Since then, the zoning on the subject parcel has changed multiple times, each time increasing the allowable density. Now the developer has approached the city wanting even more density. And in 2019, there was the Missoula area land use elements, and pertaining to this parcel, I quote, "Land use is predominantly residential. Secondary uses may include small-scale commercial in limited locations. Buildings are predominantly single-family dwellings with some 2-family dwellings." So the density of the proposal, at least from what I got from the map, is that there's going to be 51 single-family residents, 32 duplexes, 2 triplexes, and 13 quads. So that is not majority single family. That is majority multifamily.
Okay, and she went on to talk a little bit more about some of the issues that are happening just in the general area, and we got into this during the Grant Creek area subdivision, which addressed many of these concerns of transports. The city moved to higher density, and many places like the PUD site in question are developing a higher density rate. This was part of the Our Missoula growth policy inwards, like I was talking a little bit more about, which had a lot of good intentions through high density, but some of the drawbacks is that the further you get out of Missoula, the more land for houses become wider. But since adoption of Title 20, the density has actually been mostly at the borders of the city and not necessarily has been as much within the city limits as originally desired. Since the adoption of Title 20, infill and density has been at the borders, and having these areas build density affects the overall aesthetic of neighborhoods that already exist. So Charlie Fox, resident of this area, also speaks about the road.
An opponent of new subdivisions, new building. I mean, it's coming. And I think an orderly way of doing it is a good thing. I have talked to Chad Pancake and I've talked to Kevin Slovar for 2 years now on what's going to happen with the road out here. That can just keeps getting kicked down the road. Does anybody here have any idea if funding is in place to fix Lower Miller Creek? There's not a sidewalk from Linda Vista all the way to that school, and it was opened in November of 18. That's not acceptable to me. Shouldn't be acceptable to any of those parents with kids walking down there or tried to ride a bike. I think if you really take a look at this thing and you go out there and look at the traffic, if any of you drive out there, there needs to be a double roundabout put at Lower and Upper Mill Creek so that you can funnel both lanes. Lower coming on the inside, upper on the outside to get that traffic out of there. But there's just, some things like that that should be looked at. The money should be in place. The funding should be in place for that infrastructure before you start building a whole bunch more stuff out there.
All right. So yeah, that's a major point, and that's one of the major things that have been kind of ongoing back and forth. Every time there seems to be new subdivision in a certain neighborhood, sidewalks, roads, basic infrastructure is like one of the top concerns, which usually gets ignored. And a lot of times it doesn't really nothing really happens from it. And we talk about some of the roads, they kind of never really go hand in hand with housing development. I mean, the roads up the Mullen area project is getting built on the heels of the build grant, the better utilizing to leverage development, but they only applies to a lot of like actual new development a lot of times. And this would consider a lot of that new development, but anyways, kind of like how the city spends a good amount of time justifying the access problems with Grant Creek north of Reserve, Aaron Wilson with the Roads Department actually speaks a little bit more about this in response.
My understanding is that the city project on Lower Miller Creek Road, this development would be required to do all the boulevard sidewalk, all the pieces adjacent to their property, and then also contribute a proportional share to the remainder of the project, including the roundabout, new roundabout, and other facilities that would be applicable to all the SID participants. I guess the one caveat there is that the adjacent property owners wouldn't be participating in the SID portion for the sidewalk, the boulevard and sidewalk proportions they're already constructing, so we're not charging them twice for the same infrastructure.
Okay, so they already have money aside that's meant for that, so they don't want to double it up and do that kind of stuff. One of the big things that they actually moved into, and part of the newer development, will also use the developers to create new and bolster the old roads with this project. The developer of this will need more than the land, but the infrastructure regarding water, sewer, and roads for this virgin territory. They'll be talking more about this site in this next community meeting for land use and planning, where they actually talked in length just about what they're going to do with the site in general, about density and the senior living. They talk a lot about the senior living, so I'm going to kind of get through that as well. And so I'm actually not going to talk about that, because we're going to actually talk about that roundabout proposed by developers. And Ryan Gulf talks a little bit more about that roundabout proposed, and I think he's with the developer.
We do believe that this development does, does benefit from the roundabout being constructed in the near term. So that's why we are asking them to fully fund their proportion, which we've estimated to be about 35%. The remainder of that roundabout cost, we'd fold into the SID exclusive of Riverfront Trails. And then the remainder of the road work for the Lower Miller Creek Road project would just be assigned to the full SID that includes Riverfront Trails.
Okay, but before you jump out of your seat because of the SIDs, you should also be reminded that they are planning to have the developer fully fund the roundabout moving forward. So this is kind of like a past meeting. They were kind of spitballing, going back and forth, but to utilize the existing SID, which is called a Special Improvement District, to fund the roads. The total, however, was not displayed. The project, when approved, would be complete in 2025. The developer will cover the portion of the road near the site, but will take a couple places like the roundabout. So Jim Nugent talks about the SID in terms of how it can be kind of flexible and malleable to help certain portions and not just hinder other places that are already paying high SID prices for the current roads.
Your special improvement district might be legally vulnerable to challenge. So it's something you have to rely on your expert staff members to perform the analysis and give you recommendations as to how to spread the special improvement district assessment.
Okay, so the point of this, and like that was a quick little snippet, and that's Jim Nugent, the city attorney, gave some examples of places in Missoula that have SIDs that skew more cost towards one section over the other, but then also mentions that SIDs could be used if they actually benefit the site. So example, Hillview Way had some legal issues with landowners not having to pay unless they decide to develop on the site. They were just landowners. They didn't actually have any property on those sites up near Hillview Way. So legally speaking, the cost could go to the homeowners in the long run, but the existing owners in the area are concerned about more SIDs affecting them in the long term for the shorter term development. However, the benefit of the new property would also allow for easing of costs on current homeowners. That's a route the city can go by charging the newer area more than the current residents that live in the Lower Mill Creek area. Another note was Mountain Line, which at this point was only taking point and not really, not realistically in the short term. Like just in terms of Mountain Line transportation bus. The motion they plan to take for Monday will reflect developer to pay for 100% of the cost for the roundabout, thus to avoid the continuing costs for the current owners and the potential future owners of the site. So most of these meetings speak about the potential risks of flooding and the floodplain with additions to what would be built and how high. Many of the comments from the Monday reflected traffic woes and access to safety concerns that weren't really addressed in this meeting. But that's kind of how I'm going to end it there. It's still an ongoing thing. Public hearing is going to be wrapped up for final consideration on the Monday meeting. And so this is just a rezoning, which basically is going to be like the city's going to allow for what kind of development is going to happen there. And so they're going to look into this whole roundabout mess. And so I'll talk a little bit more about it next Friday. All right. Climate conservation and parks, and like I was saying, one of the big things that are moving forward as well is the buying of Marshall Mountain. So Marshall Mountain was an old ski resort back in the day. It didn't do so well, and then the city has been utilizing and leasing the space for the last couple of years and said, hey, you know, we should try purchasing this site as well. It's not considered like a city park, so we're going to look into using more of the open space bond money to help provide and continue to have the site and operate it for future use. So Donna Gockler, Director of Parks and Recreation, talks about this particular project as we jump right into this section.
This has been a very challenging project, but it's super popular among our communities, and not just the city of Missoula community, but the communities throughout the Confluence area, the Blackfoot, and the Clark Fork. This is transitioning a mountain-based recreation facility to a park. And one of the things that has caused me to want to encourage our staff to work as hard as they are and invest as much time as they are in the partnerships and in the possibility is to understand that open space acquisitions are opportunistic. And we do have 2018 open space bonds in both city and county to help with that acquisition. We do have partners who are ready to invest. We do have potential for grants. So the big question that will come to council is acquisition. And I encourage council to remember these things are opportunistic. We don't always get the opportunity to consider them.
All right. So a couple months ago, the city did a hundreds of thousands of dollars of an assessment whether or not this site would be feasible. The city has been renting the site for some time now, and being able to utilize Mountain for recreation is only beneficial to Missoula as competition for snow-based recreation in the winter and summer camps for hiking and trails of all sorts of things. This would also be a part of the open space bond, which the money of the people already voted for and re-upped later in. Basically, open space bond was voted for in 2004, so the city of Missoula can buy open space to keep it open space, and they re-upped it years later for these kinds of purchases. In the end, the city and staff are excited about this prospect of the site that offers services that covers 3,500 people every year. As popularity grows, can get upwards of 5,000 folks on this site. The cost of upwards of $1.92 million have been thrown around. And however, back in September 2021, many of the costs for that $1.6 million restoration rattlesnake were 85% covered by grants and donations. So there's a lot of potential for these open spaces. And on a side note, housing developments are multi-million-dollar projects. And the more land Missoula acquires, the better Missoula stays natural for future generations. So, and you know, with the open space bond money, there's already money put aside for this, and with the potential of these bonds, like I said before, and donations and everything like that, there is a high chance that Missoula won't necessarily have to pay, and a lot of grants and money will be put aside for people to be able to, basically for almost $2 million, a whole mountain and former ski resort. Forget about it. And that's all I kind of plan to cover for City Council today. There's always so much to cover, and there's only so much I can talk about. And one of the things they were talking about during public safety and health and also other services is that the emergency winter shelter was expanding services to homeless folks. and loosening restrictions on cattle space and use of rental related to 4-H and Future Farmers of America. So, if you have a goat or anything like that, you don't need as much space to raise them for these programs to help the kids of 4-H and FFA, Future Farmers of America, and a lot of this money, and I'm going to advocate for Future Farmers of America and 4-H, is that you get if you have, if you're in high school or middle school, you actually get a chance to raise a cow, and even if you have to do it like once or twice a week, you check in on your cow, make sure it's good, you basically sell your cow, and that money goes into a scholarship, and you can get anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000 for your bovine, cattle, everything like that. So there's a lot of great things in terms of the future farmers, and just having this updated ordinance to allow for less space for these cattle to roam is a net positive for the future farmers and also 4-H. So that's kind of what's happening there. Up next, we have a retread of an interview that I did just last Friday, but it bears repeating. Here is Gary Gillette with Tuba Christmas.
Hey guys, I'm here with Gary Gillette. He is the band director who is going to be directing the Tuba Christmas at the mall.
At the mall,
Yep.
we're back. To say things will be normal. How can 100 tubas be normal?
Yeah.
But things are with the dispersal of the COVID. And we for the last 2 years we've been at the band shell. Outside at Bottom Park. Though there could be some sad people, because there were a whole bunch of hardcores that came out. The first year it was snowing. It was real light. It was real pretty, but it was snowing during the gig. People would bring their hot chocolate and hang out and stand up and take in Tuba Christmas. But it just wasn't. We couldn't have as many folks. The first year I had to limit it to just 36 because of the COVID. So we're going to be able to reinstitute a rehearsal, which means we can take youngsters and teach them the tunes, and we'll all stay warm, and everything will be in the mall.
And speaking of rehearsals and stuff like that, for people interested in joining Tuba Christmas, what time and where are you going to rehearse?
So we'll register at 3:30. Just show up, or just go to tubachristmas.com. And you could register and bring your things with you, or just come to the mall, and we'll rehearse from 4 to 5:30, and then take a dinner break, and then grab our chairs and go down to the concourse. The concourse in front of Shields. Yep. That's what it's called, I guess. Big open area that will accommodate us and a crowd of folks that always come to the mall, either trapped there or family or intentionally.
Yeah, and it's at the top of the December, right? The first weekend in December?
The second Friday, December.
Gotcha.
Friday, December 9th.
Okay.
And I've tried to keep it there so I don't bump up against, there's an event that happens in Kalispell, one in Great Falls, and one in Spokane. And we have tuba geeks that travel around regionally and do multiple tuba events. And what it is masked, it just sounds bad. It's a bunch of tubas all playing 4-part Christmas carols together. And it sounds like a scary ordeal, but the numbers of tubas don't, the more tubas you get together, the happier the sound is. The happier, the more you get together, the happier you'll be. It works for tubas. And it doesn't get louder, it just gets like more enveloping.
Nice.
And the sounds bounce around the mall. I'm anxious to see how the acoustics are in the Shields concourse. There's a lot of hard surfaces, so I'm sure people will hear us when they come in the front entrance and go, there's tubas here somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, you guys are going to find that over at the mall, yeah, for sure.
And let's see, it's Friday, December day. We perform. So we'll play for a half hour. Then I encourage people to go out and buy something.
Yeah.
And then come back, and then we'll play another half-hour set.
Nice.
Of tuba.
Yeah, of course, some great music, live music from the Southgate Mall here in Missoula, Montana.
Hot day.
Yep.
It's going to be a party. Be fun to be warm again. It was real nice of Draftworks to lend me those patio heaters, but it was a hassle getting them across town without dropping them out of the back of a pickup truck.
And this is all community organized and everything.
Yeah. And the city band kind of backs up the event anymore. That's where I put
a
the
nice palate cleanser
Facebook.
during the winter for those who just play in the summer.
Yep. You got it, buddy. There we go. Merry Tuba Christmas. There, take that. Merry Tuba Christmas.
Things are getting cold out there in Missoula, and MCAT is doing Winter Days Camp. For 3 days, kids get a chance to make their imagination come to life in a series of hands-on learning from stop animation, filmmaking, and more. We have cameras, computers, and various Legos and props to enhance their videos. Create, share, and repeat in this 3-day workshop where kids collaborate and work on some of their own projects. Winter Days Camp at MCAT inside the award-winning Missoula Public Library. Sign up now at MCAT.org. Hey guys, welcome back. I don't have much else to say except for goodbye, and also the Maid Fair is happening on Sunday at the Adams Center. It's the basketball court over at the University of Montana, if you must know. So they're doing the Maid Fair. It's happening from 10 a.m. to about 4 p.m. One of the big staples of Missoula's Maid Fair and Crafts Fair and everything like that. There's always a lot of stuff happening here in town as well. I can't really talk too much because I don't have too much time left in the show. So I also wanted to mention MCT is doing a holiday show. Let's see, a couple performances, late night kind of jazz things happening all around town. You got the Winter Market at the Southgate Mall. You also have, like I just showed you with the interview, Gary Gillette's Tuba Christmas is happening tonight at 7 p.m. Hellgate Elementary Holiday Craft Bazaar is happening Saturday starting at 9 a.m. to about 3 p.m. It's free. Hellgate Elementary is down Mullins. And then, let's see, if you're interested in doing photos of Santa, the Street Barns is doing photos for Santa on the 10th and 11th and the 17th and 18th for the Photos of the Santa benefits Montana Hope Project. Festive Feast is at 9 Mile School. They did a Holiday Village, then they're doing a feast starting at 6 p.m. on a Saturday. There's a lot of stuff going on this weekend as well. But I don't have enough time to explain it all, and you can go to MissoulaEvents.net for more information and more. But for Wake Up Missoula, I'm Sky Ramp. Please enjoy this fun little video made by Josh Cook.